Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to The Practical Woodsman. I'm Rhett, the creator and host of The Practical Woodsman. That's right. It's my genius which has brought this all into existence. Getting into real late autumn here, early winter. Mornings have been really cold. The nights have been getting really, really cold. Would you be interested in seeing how to save $800, $900 or more on a sleeping bag, a natural down sleeping bag that can keep you warm in temperatures that are way below freezing out in the backcountry, out in the woods? Well, in this episode, you're going to see me do that exactly for myself. Got a story to tell about my sleeping bags and a tragedy that happened a few years back. And I just don't want to spend $1,000 or $900, $800 on a replacement sleeping bag that I lost just a few years back. So I'm coming up with a system for myself to save a lot of money. I think I've managed to do it for $75, believe it or not. This is not a commercial. I'm not selling a product to anybody. I'm just going to show you how to do it yourself. We have to do that little jingle, you know, the intro song before we get started. So you guys stick around. So a couple years ago, I reckon it was 4 or 5 years ago, I take my dogs out into the woods and we set up a camp right next to the fire out in the open. And about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, I get up to go drain the old one-eyed lizard. And they, because it was such a cold night, are trying to fight for space underneath my sleeping bag while I was over at the edge of the woods. And they ended up rolling too close to the fire. Fire burned a hole in my, I think it was an $800 Marmot sleeping bag. 0 degree down sleeping bag. And there was down all over the woods, feathers down all over the woods. And so it was ruined. The hole was too big to sew and those sorts of things. I couldn't patch her up. It had lost too much down. So that leaves me with only this sleeping bag that I've had for, how long have I had this sleeping bag? I got this in 2008. So this sleeping bag here is 15 years old. It's a natural goose down sleeping bag I got from Cabela's all those years ago. And, it's still okay. I think that this is only a 650 down or a 650 fill down sleeping bag. And I've noticed on nights when it's gotten down to about 0 degrees, it's not keeping me as warm as it used to. And so I've started thinking about updating my sleeping system, and I didn't really want to spend $800 on a replacement sleeping bag for that Marmot. And I was sitting around here thinking, is there a way that I can get around doing that? And I think that there is. I think I can have a better sleeping system than any of these sleeping bags for right around $75. And I wanted to share that with y'all here in this episode of the show. Before I show you this system that I've come up with, and before I actually take it out in the woods and show you how it works, we're going to actually test it. I'm not just going to show these things off to you and not actually put them out in the field and try them out. We're going to try them out, so you're going to get to see me out in the woods on this video. Perhaps with my dogs. It'll be their first time out really on a real excursion out in the woods. But I wanted to talk to you for a second about how insulation works, how sleeping bags work, how blankets work, and that sort of thing. Why do I choose down? Why don't I use a synthetic and those sorts of things? I am partial to natural materials anytime I can use natural materials, particularly because they offer so many benefits. They don't melt. They offer some really wonderful advantages to packing and carrying out in the woods. Now you'll notice that this down sleeping bag here that I'm showing from Cabela's, I don't have that compressed. I don't have that packed down into a compression bag or anything like that. It's not the proper way to store feathers, down. You want to keep that, in fact, lofted as often as possible. The only time you really want to compress that is when you're on the move, when you're on foot, when you're traveling with it. That's the time to compress it. Even when I get into camp, the first thing I do is I get my sleeping bag out. I loft it, because what happens is if it's compressed for long periods of times, then it begins to lose its loft. Well, that loft is the thing that traps in your body heat and keeps you warm. Without the loft, these things can't keep you warm. So that's something to keep in mind. I know a lot of you know this, a lot of people don't. That's why I'm sharing it. Along those same lines, sleeping bags don't keep you warm underneath you. So you get into them, you lay down on the bottom part of the sleeping bag. That compresses everything that's in that sleeping bag on the bottom part. You're not getting any insulation there. So they don't keep you warm underneath you. What's happening instead is that you're lying there. The heat from your body is rising up, and your sleeping bag is simply capturing and holding in that heat, the heat that your own body is producing. So knowing that that's how sleeping bags work, do you really need a sleeping bag? The answer is no. I think that most people who want to be in a sleeping bag do so for reasons that the sleeping bag is not even giving them a benefit in that form. And what I've learned is that a blanket will do the same thing. A proper type of top covering will do the same thing. I don't have to be entirely wrapped up. Your sleeping mattress, is the thing that's insulating you from the ground. So really all you need is something above you, on top of you, to trap in that heat and keep you warm. Personally, I prefer to not be constrained within a sleeping bag. I don't know how you all sleep, but I like to have freedom of movement when I sleep. So if you can imagine, a sleeping bag is not real conducive to not wanting to be constrained. In fact, once you do get zipped up in one of those things, your movement is awfully restrained. It's awfully constrained. And so probably about 10 years ago, I kind of stopped using sleeping bags altogether. I mean, I still use them, but I stopped using them as sleeping bags. What I would do instead is I'd unzip them all the way to the bottom and then just cover myself, like using it like a blanket. You understand what I'm saying? So zip it all the way down to the toes and then just put it over top of me. And that's how I've been sleeping out in really, really frigid conditions. I'm talking 8 below on one occasion. I slept with my sleeping bag like that, and I slept as cozy as a baby. And I've noticed that lately, these things that they call quilts have started to become popular. Like in these circles, on these outfitter stores, they've begun selling a lot of things, these things that they call quilts, which are either synthetic or down-filled blankets that have a foot box. A lot of people want that foot box. Well, I think my system, although it's not going to have a foot box, will keep you just as warm from head to toe. Maybe too warm. But the good thing about it is that it's really flexible. You can take layers off, you can put layers on. Let's take a look at this system that I've come up with for $75. Recently, Amazon had a big sale, and I just went on there and I started looking for down throw blankets. Now, these are not full-size blankets. The size is 50 inches by 70 inches. That's about the size of my body. I'm not endorsing any particular brand here. I'm just saying that I went on Amazon. I tried to find a down throw blanket made out of synthetics for the outer shell. You don't want cotton for the outer shell because it'll absorb and hold moisture. So I found these for $25 each. They are duck feather and duck down throw blankets, and I bought 3 of them, and I said 3 of those should burn me to death. I mean, that's going to be more insulation than any sleeping bag out there on the market for sure. So I've already got one of these open. Let me show it to you. Here you go. Here's what these things look like. The interesting thing was that they came in different colors, but apparently nobody wanted the gray because the gray was the cheapest. I think it was $25, and all the other throws were of different colors, and they were selling for a little bit more expensive. And so I said, well, I could care less about the collar of the bag I'm using. So I bought 3 of the gray blankets, and for $75, we're going to see what 3 of these combined can do. Let me see if I can lay this out and just give you an idea of the size of this thing. My dogs are going to be in the video for sure. They're going to be wanting to see this. Hey. Barley, take my shoe on. Well, I'll tell you, these haven't had a whole lot of time to fluff up and regain their loft, so I'm going to leave them out to air and allow them to do that. But I'll tell you, and it's not very cold today, but I can tell you right now, that is a lot of heat retention. Yeah, that's as warm as any sleeping bag I've ever had. And yeah, it's nice. Now you might be wondering about how these things compress down. I started to talk about the benefits of natural down. The greatest benefits for me: greatest heat retention for the lowest weight, greatest compression. Right, Barley? Yeah, Barley agrees with me. So let's get these things into a compression bag and see how much they pack down. Oh man, I'm getting hot. So that's just 3 of these. And I think 3 is good for sub-zero temperatures. Maybe you could take a 4th one just in case, but I think 3 is going to do it. And so we're going to get these into a compression sack and see how well they pack down. There you go, 3 different blankets. That is nice. Also, I need to cut off all these tags here, so we'll get that done and carry on with our experiment. Let me give you the specs on these blankets. These are throw size, which is 50 inches by 70 inches. I don't know what that is in feet, but I'm 6 foot tall, by the way. So it's big enough for me, and I'm 6 foot tall. The shell is 93% polyester, 7% nylon. Remember, that's exactly what I want. I don't want any material like cotton that is going to absorb and hold a lot of moisture. Fill is 30% down, 70% feather fiber, and it's warm but very light. I love it. Very comfortable, these blankets. Now, let's take a look at this big Cabela sleeping bag. Look how enormous that is. That's 650 down, or 650 fill down. And these more expensive down sleeping bags that are rated for like under 0 degrees Fahrenheit are usually 800, 850 fill. And that simply means the amount of down material in the sleeping bag. Now here's something I wanted to mention about why I like my system better. Remember how I mentioned that when you're in your sleeping bag, your body is compressing a lot of the down that is in the sleeping bag, because the down fill in a sleeping bag goes all the way around, right? And so you're lying on that duck or goose down, compressing it, therefore rendering it completely useless, and therefore you're carrying down that's not doing you any good. It's not keeping you warm. It's just added weight. It's there for no reason whatsoever. That's why I've really getting away from sleeping bags when it comes to real time out in the backcountry. But what I want to do is, this is a 650 down sleeping bag. It's enormous, right? Because it's all fluffed out. Let's put this in a compression bag and see how big this is. Then we'll take our 3 blankets. We'll do the same thing with them, put them in a single compression bag and compare the sizes, because I think that my blanket system, because every bit of down or insulation is being put to use to cover me. It's actually covering me and keeping me warm. I'm not carrying down pointlessly. I'm not carrying anything pointlessly. That's just weight, and it does me no good out in the field. This sleeping bag I think I got for sale for $400. I think I paid $400 for this, and that other Marmot sleeping bag that I used to have that I don't have no more because my dogs burn it all up in the fire. That was, I paid every bit of $800 for that. I hated to see it go, but I'm also happy to experiment around and find ways to stay just as comfortable, have just as quality of a product, or as a sleep system for a very small fraction of the cost of some of these highfalutin sleeping bags. So let's do that. Let's compress this. We'll compress the blankets. That may be. We'll see. Whew, that is always a big job, getting a sleeping bag into a small bag. One of those big, fluffed out, down sleeping bags into a really small sleeping bag. All right, let's see how this works here. There we go. Here's the cap. All right, that ain't beautiful, but we got her in there. Nicely compressed. Let me get a bottle of water to give you an idea of this size. There we go. An idea of the 650 down sleeping bag compressed from Cabela's. $400 sleeping bag. Now we're going to do the same with my 3 blankets that cost $25 each. I'm going to cut some of these tags off while I'm at it. Tell you what, this is already easier. Think about that. Think if your sleeping bag was split up into 3 parts and you could just put 1 part in your compression bag at a time instead of trying to get this ginormous mass into a compression bag. That's 1 blanket. Let's go ahead and do the 2 others. Tell you what, I'm a big fan of these blankets. They're so comfortable, but so light. And when I don't know if you noticed, when you layer them, because of this polyester material, they don't slide all over the place on top of each other. They stay put. Originally, I was thinking that I might have to clip these together in order to get them all to stay together, but you don't have to, because just the nature of the material against each other kind of holds it in place. So I can see myself sleeping all through the night without these blankets shifting off of each other very easily. These are really nice blankets. And what a price, man. What a price for down. You can't beat her with a stick. Okay, we got 2 blankets in there. It's going to be tough to get this 3rd one in there in this particular compression sack. We may have to use a different compression sack, but let's see if we can get this 3rd one in here. Well, I didn't have to use a different compression sack. I think I will use a different compression sack in the future, one that's just a little bit bigger, but for what we're doing here, we don't need to do that. All right, got the cap on there. Let's start compressing this thing down. Okay, there's those 3 blankets compressed about the same size as the 650 down sleeping bag. So I'll tell you, it feels a little heavier too. A little bit heavier, and I would say that the reason why it feels a little bit heavier is because of the shell of those blankets. Whereas a single sleeping bag only has one shell, so that's less polyester material, and then the rest is just goose or duck fill. Because I'm using 3 individual blankets, it has a lot more of that heavy polyester material. It's not heavy, but combined, these 3 blankets, I can feel the weight. Still, I have said in other episodes of this show that I'm done getting cold in the middle of the night. If I have to carry a little bit extra weight to ensure that I will be comfortable in whatever temperatures, well then, brother, that's what I'm doing. Also, do you think that I mind carrying just the slightest fraction of extra weight when I'm saving upwards of $800 and staying just as comfortable and just as warm out in the woods? No, I don't mind. That doesn't matter to me at all. Well, the only thing left for us to do is to actually put this to the test. Go out and spend a night in the woods and see how this performs. Let's do it.